Power is a curious thing, my lord. Are you fond of riddles? 3 great men sit in a room. A king, a priest, and a rich man. Between them stands a common sellsword. Each great man bids the sellsword kill the other 2. Who lives, who dies. Power resides where men believe it resides. It's a trick, a shadow on the wall. And a very small man can cast a very large shadow.
Welcome back, Watchers Beyond the Wall. For those who are new, my name is Monica. On this channel, we explore the rich world of A Song of Ice and Fire, along with fantasy and science fiction stories that captivate us through lore, history, and incredible world building. From character analyzations and hidden symbolisms to deep dives into games, books, and television adaptations, nothing is off limits. This is a place for over-analyzing every detail, revisiting scenes and chapters countless of times, and uncovering the deeper meaning with stories we love. Together, we'll examine the choices of writers and the motivation of characters, and the subtle clues that often go unnoticed on your first watch or read. So without further ado, gather your thoughts, sharpen your theories, and prepare yourself for another rewatch. The ultimate downfall of House Targaryen, one of the most powerful dynasties to ever grace the history of Westeros, did not begin with rebellion or civil war. It began with one single man's gloriful vision.
Our histories. They tell us that Aegon looked across the Blackwater from Dragonstone and saw a rich land ripe for the capture. But ambition alone is not what drove him to conquest. It was a dream. And just as Aenys foresaw the end of Valyria, Aegon foresaw the end of the world of men.
Of a long-stretching darkness that would engulf the 7 kingdoms of Westeros, and if a Targaryen was not seated on the throne, mankind would be swallowed up by the darkness. The man who built the 7 kingdoms of Westeros alongside his sister wives was Aegon the Conqueror. Though Aegon's strength and vision united the 7 kingdoms under the Targaryen banner, his reign faltered to address one critical foundational challenge of governance: to establish a stable and enduring system of succession.
Robert is not dead yet. The gods may spare him. If not, I shall convene the council to hear his final words and consider the matter of the succession. But I will not dishonor his last hours on earth by shedding blood in his halls and dragging frightened children from their beds.
His unyielding fire and blood united a new realm and left behind a legacy of ambiguity and conflict. In the absence of a clear and universally accepted precedent for succession, the seeds of discord were planted, waiting to sprout in the next generation that followed. The reign of Aegon's son, Aerys I and Maegor the Cruel, served as the first warnings of the cracks in a foundation of their dynasty. Aenys, the eldest son, inherited his father's crown, but not his commanding presence or strength of will. His rule was marred by doubt, as lords and common folk alike questioned his legitimacy and capability to lead.
The strength of Aegon and his sisters and their dragons had been enough to subdue those who opposed them, but the same could not be said for their heirs.
His generosity was deemed as weakness, which stood in stark contrast to his father, who left the realm in stable means. But if Aenys was too soft, Maegor the Cruel, his younger brother, was the extreme opposite, seizing power through bloodshed and tyranny. Maegor ruled with an iron fist, quelling discussions of rebellions not through diplomacy, but through an unspeakable acts of brutality. His reign was marked by the construction of the Red Keep and the infamous atrocities committed during the Faith Militant Uprising, bringing the realm to its knees in fear.
I want them both dead.
You'll dishonor yourself forever if you do this.
Honor? I've got 7 kingdoms to rule. 1 king, 7 kingdoms. Do you think honor keeps them in line? Do you think it's honor that's keeping the peace? It's fear. Fear and blood.
Then we're no better than the Mad King.
Careful, Ned. Careful now.
But fear alone could not sustain the Targaryen legacy. While Maegor the Cruel succeeded in quelling immediate threats to the Targaryen rule, his cruel and demeaning manner destroyed the unification that his father, Aegon the Conqueror, built, breaking these long-lasting connections through allies left a legacy of distrust and hate. The contrast between Aerys Targaryen and his younger brother Maegor, the ineffectual dreamer and the merciless tyrant, revealed the vulnerability it harbored within the dynasty, unparalleled to the resolves of succession, the eventual downfall of the house, and the eventual cataclysmic event known as the Dance of the Dragons. Aegon the Conqueror may have united the Seven Kingdoms, but he had failed to unite his own family. The brothers' relationship was not one of a kinship that they should have shared. The brothers' contentious relationship and the abuse of a codified system for inheritance ignited a cycle of infighting and instability that would plague House Targaryen for generations to come.
I told you I don't want it.
It doesn't matter what you want. You didn't want to be king in the north. What happens when they demand you press your claim and take what is mine?
You are my queen. I don't know what else I can say.
You can say nothing to anyone ever. Never tell them who you really are. Swear your brother and Samwell Tarly to secrecy and tell no one else. Or it will take on a life of its own and you won't be able to control it or what it does to people. No matter how many times you bend the knee. No matter what you swear.
The early chaos foreshadowed the dynasty's ultimate fate. Without a clear path of succession, each generation of Targaryens would be drawn into a conflict over legitimacy and power. These disputes would reach their zenith in the bloodiest Targaryen civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons.
The Dance of Dragons.
What's it about?
It's the story of the fight between Rhaena Targaryen and her half-brother Aegon for control of the Seven Kingdoms. Both of them thought they belonged on the Iron Throne. When people started declaring for one of them or the other, their fight divided the kingdoms in two. Brothers fought brothers. Dragons fought dragons. By the time it was over, thousands were dead. And it was a disaster for the Targaryens as well. They never truly recovered.
A conflict that shattered the Targaryen dynasty and reduced their fire-breathing might to a shadow of its former glory. The reign of Aerys I and Maegor the Cruel, with all its struggles and failures, were not just pages in the early days of the Targaryen history books. They were warnings, harbingers of chaos that would eventually destroy the legacy as we knew it. What Aegon failed to build was the unification of his family, a legacy that would withstand the test of time, ambition, and human glory.
I must have the city behind me. The whole city. I need... She could not say it. Your Grace, Sir Barristan prompted, gently. A queen belongs not to herself, but to her people. I need Hisdar Zoloric.
The rise of House Targaryen, with its legacy marred with fire and blood, ultimately was a glorious opportunity to shape Westeros to a formidable power source. But they failed, involving the unwritten and untold legacy, a destiny born in fire but destined to unravel in blood. Aegon Targaryen, known as the Conqueror. This will be just a summary of Aegon's conquest, as I've already done a separate video going further in depth in what exactly happened in the conflict between his conquest within the Seven Kingdoms. So if you want a further in-depth overlook of Aegon's conquest, I'll have that video pinned in the comments down below or on one of the toggles you'll see here. But without further ado, let's talk about a brief summary of Aegon's conquest. Aegon I Targaryen is also known as Aegon the Conqueror. He is the founder of the Targaryen dynasty and the first king of the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. He was born on Dragonstone. Aegon and his family are of Valyrian descent. After flooding the doom of Valyria over a century earlier,
What followed in the sudden vacuum was chaos. The Dragon Lords had been gathered in Valyria, as was their wont, except for Rhaena Targaryen, his children, and his dragons, who had fled to Dragonstone and so escaped the doom.
Aegon, alongside his sister wives, Rhaenys and Visenya, launched a campaign to unify Westeros under his rule, unleashing an era of the Targaryens' dominion. Aegon's most significant achievement was the unification of 6 of the 7 kingdoms under his rule through a combination of military might alliances, and the unmatched power of his dragons, Velaryon, Vhagar, and Meraxes.
Harren the Black thought this castle would be his legacy. Greatest fortress ever built. Tallest towers, the strongest walls. The Great Hall had 35 hearths. 35, can you imagine? Look at it now. Dragons happened.
His conquest began with the landing at the mouth of Blackwater River, where he established the Aegon Fort, the precursor to King's Landing. He forged the Iron Throne from the swords of his defeated enemies. He forged the Iron Throne from the swords of his fallen enemies, a symbol of his authority and the cost of conquest. Aegon allowed that the rulers of Dorne become an independent kingdom after they successfully defeated them in multiple conflicts. He also retained existing institutions such as the faith of the Seven and the laws of individual religions.
You are fearing for your father. That is right. You pray to the gods.
The old and the new.
There is only one God, and his name is death. And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
To ensure a smoother transition of power to governance his vast realm, Aegon established a small council, putting trusted advisors in key positions, laying the foundation in a critical role that would help the Seven Kingdoms stay unified and in a stabilitated state. As Aegon passed from this world to the next, he left behind a legacy both awe-inspiring and fragile.
When the dragon passed at the age of 4 and 60, his reign had been uncontested by all save the Dornishmen. He had ruled wisely, showing himself well during his royal progresses.
His death marked the end of the era of conquest and began a new chapter for House Targaryen. Now, this chapter was supposed to be a chapter of stability, unification, and peace, but it was not. The crown passed to his eldest son, Aerys, born of Aegon and his beloved sister wife, Rhaenys. Rhaenys sadly lost her life during the conquest in a conflict with Dorne. Unlike his father, Aerys lacked the commandants of a presence and the timeless power that came with governance. They still needed a strong, authoritative rule to lead them into this new chapter of peace, but Aenys did not fit the criteria of this voice.
One army, a real army, united behind one leader with one purpose. Our purpose died with the Mad King.
While Aegon was the symbol of unrelenting power, Aerys was too gentle, generous, carefree, and eager to please. He was quoted as being a dreamer rather than a warrior, and the noble lords and small folk alike saw this for what he was. The realm watched, worried, wondering how Aenys would keep the realm together as he ascended the throne. His succession was a moment of hope for some, but uncertainty for others.
Yet beneath the surface of this largely peaceful rule was a roiling cauldron of dissent. In their hearts, many of his subjects still cherished the old days.
The challenges that would lay ahead would be formidable. The unification of the Seven Kingdoms under his father's reign was not an easy task, and there were still noble lords that were cocky for independence. But what tested the Targaryen dynasty the most was the faith of the Seven. And the faith of the Seven would be a thorn in Aerys' side as he did stuff of diplomatic pursuits that was known to the Valyrian customs. It would not be an easy reign. Thus it began the tumultuous conflicts, several uprisings and rebellions under his reign. The rebellions, the doubts, and division that would define Aerys' reign were already looming over the horizon, a shadow of the conqueror's hard win of peace, thus beginning the reign of Aerys I Targaryen, a king who would endure not only the weight of his father's expectations and the crown of his predecessor, but also the daunting task of proving his own self-worth to those who would call him king.
Here then, power resides where men believe it resides. No more and no less. So power is a mummer's trick, a shadow on the wall, Varys murmured. Yet shadows can kill, and oft times a very small man can cast a very large shadow.
Where Aegon had built a long-lasting legacy, Aenys would struggle to keep his power in check, and thus the cracks of the Targaryen dynasty would start to form. His rule was a foreshadow of darker days yet to come for House Targaryen and its eventual downfall. Aerys Targaryen, the second king of the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. King Aenys I Targaryen, the second ruler of the Targaryen dynasty, ascended the Iron Throne in 37 AC, following the death of his father, Aegon the Conqueror. His reign, though short, is remembered as a time of uncertainty and unparalleled that would foreshadow the future crisis within the Targaryen lineage. Aenys embodied many of the vulnerable aspects that plagued the dynasty that served as an earlier harbinger of the eventual downfall, including the usurpation of his son by Maegor the Cruel. From the moment of birth, Aenys appeared fragile.
But though his father and brother, Maegor, who was Viserys' child, were both warriors born, Aenys was made of different stuff. He had begun life as a weak and sickly infant, and remained so throughout his earliest years.
And out of step of the robust legacy his father needed to leave behind. Born small and sickly to Aegon and his sister wife Rhaenys, rumors swirled about the legitimacy, with some speculating that Rhaenys had slept around with singers and mummers instead of this truly being Aegon's son. Those doubts later were subsequently ended when Aenys bonded to a dragon named Quicksilver.
He thought they'd happened upon some wild, unnamed dragon lured to the dragon pit.
Your grandsons are a menace.
They're more children than he is.
They're savages. It's not surprising.
Are you sure it wasn't our Aegon who put them up to it?
It's a wonder to me their eggs ever hatched.
Why is that?
You know why.
I'm afraid I don't.
Don't.
A gift from his father that seemed to restore his vulnerability and faith to those who spectated on his true legitimacy. As king, Aenys inherited the monumental task of ruling a kingdom forged through fire and blood. Unlike his father, Aenys lacked the comprehension to command presence and to lead this monumental realm. With no strength when it comes to leadership, he was unable to make quick decisions.
And the king again acted indecisively, at first commanding that a host sail for the Vale to deal with the usurper, Jaehaerys, who had imprisoned his own brother, Lord Ronald, and suddenly recalling the order for fear that Aeron the Red and his men might infiltrate King's Landing.
He had a kind heart and was generous and eager to please. These unique qualities did not make him popular, and those who were in his intermediate circle would use his vulnerability to manipulate him. This caused several uprisings within his reign. His reign was marred by several rebellions and uprisings, the most notable being the uprising of the Faith Militant, who objected to the Targaryen practice of incestual marriage.
The Targaryens
Wed brother and sister for hundreds of years, I know. It's what Jamie and I would say to each other in our moments of doubt. It's what I told Ned Stark when he was stupid enough to confront me. Half the Targaryens went mad, didn't they? What's the saying? Every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin.
And question Aerys on his authority. Aenys' indecisive nature and desire to appease all parties only emboldened his enemies, while he sought to secure more political alliances through marriage and have a stable succession. He decided to wed his daughter Rhaena to her brother Aegon, but this angered the faith of the Seven more, sparking more unrest under the small folk and faith militant. Aenys' reign highlighted the perils of a weak king within a dynasty defined by strength. His inability to quell deceit or quell a loyal army planted the seeds of betrayal.
When my enemy coils himself to strike, I can do nothing now but ask you to honor your husband's words.
It would not serve me to set you free.
At best, I lose an asset to my cause. At worst, you betray me in some foul way. I have no interest in betraying you, Your Grace.
That would culminate in the rise of his younger half-brother, Maegor, the son of Aegon and Visenya, was everything Aenys was not: ruthless, a decision-maker, and ultimately, the better outcome if you compare the two. I am not saying by any means that Maegor the Cruel was some great leader, but I am saying that the faith of the Seven was already getting out of hand. Right now, in current book series, the Lannisters cannot take care of the faith of the Seven, and that is because the Targaryens, even at the height of their strength, couldn't control them. The Andals are the reason why the faith of the Seven was even in Westeros, and if they wouldn't be conquered in old Valyria, why would they be conquered now?
Just as Maegor the Cruel once took the swords from the faith, so Jaehaerys the Conciliator deprived us of the scales of judgment. Yet who is truly fit to judge a queen, save the Seven above, and the gods sworn below?
When Aenys subsequently succumbed to his illness in 42 AC, Maegor seized the opportunity, proclaiming himself the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms, sidelining Aenys' son, Prince Aegon the Uncrowned. This act of usurpation marked the beginning of a brutal chapter in Westerosi history. A significant thing to point out is this power struggle isn't the first, it's just one of many, and this isn't even a 10th generation into the Targaryen lineage. This is 3 generations in, and they are already having conflict with the throne.
By the end of 41 AC, most of the realm had turned against him. Thousands of poor fellows prowled the roads, threatening the king's supporters, and dozens of lords took up arms against the Iron Throne. Though Aenys was only 5 and 30, it was said that he looked more like a man of 60, and Grand Maester Gawain despaired of improving his condition.
Aegon, being a true Targaryen, bonded with Quicksilver, his father's dragon, and would not allow his uncle to usurp him. Attempting to reclaim his father's throne, he was subsequently defeated and killed by Maegor and his dragon above the Bottle of the God's Eye. Though Aenys sought to rule with a gentler hand, his rule was undercut, and it left cracks in a foundation where he did not address his power and succession. His faults underscore the importance of a strong leadership, direct action, and not to be manipulated by others. The faith of the Seven are just one facet of his reign that I will get into a little bit later. The Uprising, specifically talking about the unification of the Seven Kingdoms. This was the Seven Kingdoms' second ruler. The great houses, although subdued, are still bitter because a few years earlier they were independent. Aenys needed to build a bridge of hope, longevity, not through kindness and not through softness, but by political ties, by governing a system of hope and security.
Why shouldn't we rule ourselves again? It was the dragons we bowed to, and now the dragons are dead. There sits the only king I mean to bend my knee to. The King of the North!
You can make long-lasting relationships with your allies, but instead, he laid the cracks of a Targaryen legacy, he caused its eventual downfall. I find it very ominous that Aenys and Viserys both have very similar archetypes when it comes for governance. Before the Dance of the Dragons, we are marked by an era of peace with Jaehaerys' reign. Now, Viserys wanted to emulate that, but he did not have the bandwidth or the capability of Jaehaerys' strength. Now, Aenys did not have strength either. He wanted to be softer and gentler than his father. I mean, after all, his father was a conqueror. Embodying that would not work the same way. He needed to create long-lasting relationships, but didn't know how. By Viserys not emboldening his allies and using harsher means or letting his enemies be fearful of him allowed the Dance of the Dragons to underplay. I just find it very fascinating that these two rulers have very similar power structures and then their children get usurped. Queen Alyssa Velaryon. Alyssa Velaryon, a prominent figure in the early days of the Targaryen dynasty, embodied the ideas of grace, intellectualism, and resilience. It defined her long-lasting life and legacy.
The gods blessed Alyssa herself with the deep purple eyes and shining silvery hair of old Valyria, and gave her charm and wit and kindness as well, and as she grew, suitors flocked around her from every corner of the realm.
Born in 7 AC to Lord Ethan Velaryon, Master of Ships, Lady Alara Massey. Alyssa inherited the striking Valyrian features of her lineage, silver hair and purple eyes. Her life spanned one of the most tumultuous periods of the Targaryen history, during of which she played a crucial role as a queen, mother, and later regent for her son, King Jaehaerys Targaryen, known as Jaehaerys the Wise.
This council would do well to remember that their queen wears the crown of my grandsire, Jaehaerys the Conciliator. A prudent ruler, the wisest of Targaryen kings whose reign outlasted every other. Even Aegon the Conqueror's.
From the offset, Alyssa's life was steeped in duty and tradition. Her marriage in 22 AC to her cousin, Prince Aenys Targaryen, was a politically advantageous match, unifying the two most powerful Valyrian bloodlines in Westeros. Their unity produced 6 children: Rhaena, Aegon, Viserys, Jaehaerys, Alysanne, and Vaella. Despite the pressures of royal life, Alyssa was known for her charming wit, kindness, and traits that endeared those around her. Septon Both observed that Alyssa's great desire was to be loved, admired, and praised, a longing to shape her relationships and roles as a queen. As the wife of Aerys I, Alyssa ascended the position of queen consort in 37 AC.
There was never any true question of whom she would wed, however. For a girl such as her, only royalty would suffice, and in the year 22 AC, she married Prince Aenys Targaryen, the unquestioned heir to the Iron Throne.
Upon the death of Aegon the Conqueror, her reign as queen was marked by the outgoing struggle to navigate the complexity of her husband's troubled reign. Aerys, known for his gentle and carefree attitude, faced growing conflicts and insurrections, most notably by the Faith of the Seven. Alyssa stood by the best she could through the challenges, supporting his efforts to quell the rebellions, to maintain the steady outlook of the Targaryen dynasty. During this period, she took out public duties traveling the realm alongside Aerys on a royal pursuit to help solidify his resolve as being king, and hopefully, by the sheer amount of pressure, rebellions would cease. Basically, they thought that if the common folk and the great houses saw them, it would solidify their reign in a momentous way. It reminds me of the line Rhaena Targaryen, her younger version, says in like episode 2 or 3, and she tells Viserys, her father, it would be a show of force if they go to the stepstones with the dragon riders. It wouldn't be an initiated of war, but it would be a warning that if they didn't stop in due time they would come with fire and blood.
The losses would be incalculable.
Army of his gold cloaks. Daemon has squatted down. Ships and men are at the ready. The stepstones will be settled. In time.
You have dragon riders, father. Send us. It would be a show of force.
So they don't come heavy-handed when they go to the great houses, but they do bring their dragons, they do bring their armies, and they do a royal pursuit to show them that we are here, we have already conquered, and we will stay. Alyssa's courage and strength was tested further in 41 AC when the Faith Militant openly rebelled against the Targaryens' rule. To protect her family, she relocated to Dragonstone as the threats of the royal household increased. Tragedy struck Aenys as he succumbed to his illness the following year, leaving Alyssa a widow. At his funeral, she sung a dirge for her late husband, a testament and reflection of her grief and solitude. Following Aerys' death, Alyssa's life took a dramatic turn when her brother-in-law, the ruthless Maegor the Cruel, seized the throne and proclaimed himself as the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms.
The queen scarce had time to grieve for him before his brother seized the throne that rightly belonged to her eldest son. She saw her son rise up against his uncle and die together with his dragon.
Yet, Alyssa's resilience shone through. After Maegor the Cruel's death, she proclaimed herself as Queen Regent and assisted her son, Jaehaerys I, as king, guiding him through the formative years of his reign. For political reasons, Alyssa later in life married for a second time to Lord Roger Baratheon, with whom she had 2 additional children with. Her wedding cloak bared the sigil of both House Velaryon and House Targaryen, the sigil of her loyalty to her heraldry. Even in her new role as Lady Baratheon, Alyssa continued to influence the realm and served a bridge between the traditions of the past and the sanctity of the future.
The history of our noble houses extends beyond the Seven Kingdoms to the days of old Valyria. For as long as House Targaryen has ruled the skies, House Velaryon has ruled the seas.
And helped the further stability within the realm under King Jaehaerys' reign. Alyssa Velaryon's legacy is one of steadfast devotion to her family and duty to herself as queen, mother, and regent. She navigated through the swift tide of power and delicacy with grace and opportunistic kinship. Her life was something of a momentous occasion, standing tall through the testament of valiant deeds and not being overlooked even though she was a woman in a patriarchal society. Alysanne did the things that nobody will allow the women in House of the Dragon to do.
But now we must name a regent to take his place, until he recovers. I myself served in this role for my husband. I am well prepared to do it again.
You played your part admirably in a time of peace, Your Grace, but circumstances have changed.
And here I had forgotten.
The king does not lack for heirs. The obvious choice is his immediate successor. I agree, Your Grace, it must be Prince Aemond. What would you say if in response to Rhaenyra's crowning we raised up a woman of our own?
She was Queen Regent. Nobody protested that. House of the Dragon wants Rhaenyra to come in like an underdog. If they had Alicent do that in season 1, then they wouldn't have been able to proclaim Rhaenyra as the first woman to lead the Seven Kingdoms. And I think that's why they didn't express that Jaehaerys' reign, for a good majority of it, his mother was ruling the Seven Kingdoms. It's not that a woman has not ruled the Seven Kingdoms, it's that they have not told us within the TV show. Alyssa and Aegon's children. King Aerys and Queen Alyssa were blessed with 6 children, each of whom played a critical and significant role in the history of the Targaryen lineage. Their lives were marked by trials and tribulations of each of the realm, with its influx of problems and issues from the challenges imposed by the rebellion and factions of the discourse within their own family stability when it came to succession. These children, who all inherited the distinct traits of their noble lineage, such as the Targaryen purple eyes and silver golden hair, which lived an indelible mark on the history of Westeros. Rhaena Targaryen. Rhaena Targaryen is the eldest child of King Aenys Targaryen and Alyssa Velaryon. 6 kids they had, and she was the first among them. A dragon rider of Dreamfire, she was graceful and forced to marry her uncle Maegor the Cruel after he usurped Aegon's rightful place on the throne, becoming one of his Black Brides.
The Black Brides. In 47 AC, Maegor took 3 women to wife in a single ceremony, all women of proven fertility, and all widows who had lost their husbands to Maegor's wars or at his command.
During her brother King Jaehaerys I's reign, she was known as the Queen in the West of the Westerlands and the Queen of the East at Dragonstone. Rhaena had lively lilac eyes and silver gold hair, and grew up from being a shy child. People often noted that she was a dreamy child, although beautiful and brave and headstrong as a young woman. She preferred animals and books over people her own age when she was a child, often hiding behind her mother and father when strangers came near. After she bonded with her dragon, Dreamfire, it helped her to come out of her shyness. Though she was quiet and standoffish, she was always the first one to make new friends. She had an exceptional singing voice and became brave and fierce on her 18th name day. As an adult, she was often sometimes stern due to the tragedies that she faced through her earlier youth.
When Prince Aegon was killed by Maegor in the battle beneath the God's Eye, Rhaena took refuge on Fair Isle under the protection of Lord Farman, who hid her and her twin daughters. Diana found the twin girls, however, and Rhaena was then forced to wed Maegor.
Being stubborn and passionate to protect her children and those she loved, through betrayal and tragedy, made her withdrawn as she often became detached through her later years. Her hair turned completely white due to stress. Born in 23 AC at Dragonstone, Rhaena was one of the first grandchildren of King Aegon Targaryen. He wept once he held her from the cradle. Many wondered if her uncle Maegor would fall behind in the line of succession, a proposal that brought uprising through the faith militant. Her parents protested this proclaim. At age 9, Rhaena bonded with her dragon Dreamfire, and at 12 she took her first flight, forming a close kinship with her dragon and often preferring the skies rather than talking amongst people. Although she did have close friendships with Alyssa Velaryon and later Samantha Stokeworth, Rhaena was extremely close to her brother husband Aegon II, often taking with flight on Dreamfire and bonding and spending close time together. She doted on her other siblings, placing dragon eggs in their cradle. She did this with Jaehaerys and Alysanne, which later hatched Vermithor and Silverwing.
The dragon, named Vermithor, is the largest in the world after Vhagar, and perhaps the most fierce.
Although she preferred flying over spending time with others, her reign is overshadowed and overlooked, and is also a point of conjecture with the Targaryen lineage, as it's one of the most somber areas in the Targaryen history. Aegon II, also known as Aegon the Uncrowned. Aegon, born in 26 AC to Prince Aenys Targaryen and Lady Alyssa Velaryon, was a handsome and skilled young man, catching the eye of many maidens. By 15, he had harnessed his martial skills and was regarded as the best young lance in the realm. In 37 AC, he was at Dragonstone with him and his brother Viserys, when when they had heard of their grandfather, King Aegon the Conqueror, had died. Despite not yet claiming a dragon by 41 AC, Aegon often flew with his sister on Dreamfire. His father, Aenys I, arranged a marriage between him and his sister, naming him Prince of Dragonstone.
And in 41 AC, Aenys made matters worse when he chose to wed his eldest daughter, Rhaena, to his son and heir, Aegon, whom he named Prince of Dragonstone in Maegor's place.
This deeply upset the Dowager Queen Visenya. However, the incestuous marriage upset the faith militant, led a public persecution of the Targaryen. In 42 AC, Aegon and Rhaella were trapped at Crack Hall by the faith Uprising. King Aerys died, and Maegor proclaimed himself the rightful king, forcing Aegon and Rhaella to flee to Casterly Rock. Their twin daughters, Aery and Rhaella, were born the following year. Maegor's coronation saw many abandoning Aegon because he had not claimed a dragon, and many proclaimed him as weak. Viserys Targaryen. Not much is truly known about Viserys, although his legacy is marred by tragedy due to Maegor the Cruel. Viserys was born in 29 AC to Prince Aenys Targaryen and Alyssa Velaryon. He was the third child amongst the couple. Him and his older brother Aegon were on Dragonstone when they learned of their grandsire's passing. At age 8,
A short while later, her second son followed him to the funeral pyre, tortured to death by Diana of the Tower. Together with her two youngest children, Alyssa was made a prisoner in all but name of the man who had brought about the death of her sons, and was made to bear witness when her eldest daughter was forced into marriage to that same monster.
Viserys traveled with his family to Old Town for his father's coronation, an announcement of the Faith of the Seven. He was also present on Dragonstone during Aenys' funeral in 42 AC. After Aenys' death, Viserys' uncle Maegor ascended the throne. Maegor took Viserys as a squire and a hostage to prevent the family from rebelling within itself. Following the death
Proceeds in war will follow, do you understand? The realm will not accept her, and to secure her claim, she'll have to put your children to the sword. She'll have no choice.
of Dowager Queen Vaella Targaryen in 44 AC, Viserys' mother, Dowager Queen Alyssa Velaryon, fled with his younger siblings, Jaehaerys and Alysanne. In retaliation, Maegor tortured Viserys for 9 days until his subsequent death, leaving his body in the courtyard for a fortnight, hoping to lure Alysanne back. Viserys was 15 at his death. When Jaehaerys Targaryen, his brother, became king, he executed those responsible for Viserys' death and torture.
But I cannot restore it, I.
No, because it's been taken.
What would you have me do?
There is a debt to be paid. I shall have one of her son's eyes in return.
Sending their heads and hands to their mother, who was pleased by the takings. Jaehaerys I Targaryen. Jaehaerys Targaryen was born in 34 AC. He was the third son and fourth child of Aenys Targaryen and Alyssa Velaryon. He's characterized as having purple eyes, customary trait within House Targaryen. He wore his hair loose and long around his shoulders at age 16. He looked as if he was a king himself, standing tall and handsome.
Jaehaerys came to the throne in 48 AC, in a time when the realm had been torn asunder by the ambitions of rebellious lords, the fury of the High Septon, and the cruelty of his uncle, Maegor I.
By 84 AC, at 50, he had grown gaunt and thin. His hair was more gray than gold, and in his later years, his beard turned almost all white and reached his waist, although he still moved with grace and looked wise and dignified. Jaehaerys was also known for his wisdom, fairness, and chivalry. He was learned as a maester and pious as a septon. His mother, Queen Alyssa, called him the best of her 3 sons. Decisive and thoughtful, Jaehaerys always sought peaceful ends to avoid any situation, and avoiding making outright threats, using veiled ambiguity instead of making them outright.
Decisive in thought indeed, Jaehaerys was wise beyond his years, always seeking the most peaceable ends. His queen, Alysanne, was also well loved throughout the realm.
By 14, Jaehaerys was already a skilled lance with longbow and at arms. He was known for his love of travel and made many royal progresses with his sister wife, good Queen Alysanne. Staying so often at an inn at a crossroads, they renamed it on their behalf the Two Crowns. He was fascinated with books and scrolls in Dragonstone's library and was extremely close to Alysanne from childhood. Alysanne Targaryen. Alysanne, born in 36 AC, was known for her blue eyes and honey curls. Though she was not described as beautiful rather than pretty, she was loved all throughout the Seven Kingdoms.
Alysanne Targaryen, the youngest child of King Aenys and Queen Alyssa, had been little known amongst the lords and ladies of the realm before then. Her childhood had been spent in the shadow of her brothers and her elder sister Rhaena, and when she was spoken of at all, it was as the little maid and the other daughter.
Alysanne was gentle, kind, and loving, known for her sweet smile and pleasant voice. She loved music, dancing, reading, and flying with her dragon, and was a fine archer and hunter. Bright but unremarkable as a young girl, she had a great wit and made powerful impressions to those she met. Later in life, her hair turned white and she wore it in a bun. Her face showed age, but she reserved her strength. After her son Aemon's death in 92 AC, Alysanne grew thin and fragile, and it became difficult for her to walk on her own. She eventually used a cane, had hearing loss, and no longer could fly on her dragon. Alysanne's childhood was marred by a turbulent one at that. After the death of her grandsire Aegon the Conqueror in 37 AC, her father Aenys became king. But when he decided to marry Alyssa's siblings, Rhaena and Aegon, it stirred an uprising that could not be quelled as easily as her father had hoped by the faith of the Seven. Their family fled to Dragonstone after an assassination attempt. King Aenys died in 42 AC, leading Maegor the Cruel's usurpation of the throne. Alyssa and Jaehaerys quelled this rebellion after Aegon's death. It was the only way to restore peace and order throughout the realm. Princess Vaella Targaryen, the youngest child of Aenys and Alyssa, was born in 39 AC and died in the cradle shortly after her birth. Her death had a lasting impact on her mother, Alysanne, who had later expressed her fears of losing another child in infancy while being pregnant with her second marriage to Lord Roger Baratheon. The reign of Aenys I Targaryen. The second king of the Seven Kingdoms was defined by his persistent struggle to maintain legitimacy and stability amongst widely spread doubts of his capability to rule.
Joff has had no lack of good counsel. He's always been strong-willed. Now that he's king, he believes he should do as he pleases, not as he's bid. The crowns do queer things to heads beneath them, Tyrion agreed.
Although he ascended the Iron Throne with the blessing of the faith of the Seven, his reign was plagued with uprisings, criticism, and ultimately his own inability to successfully control the fractured realm. Aenys inherited a kingdom unified by conquest, but far from cohesive. His father, Aegon the Conqueror, had imposed a fragile peace that Aenys was ill-equipped to sustain. Even as he ascended the throne, doubts about his strength wavered, voiced most prominently by his stepmother, Dowager Queen Vaella Targaryen.
Visenya.
Vhagar's first rider, and the first wielder of Dark Sister.
I hope you do not mean to use her as an example.
Why shouldn't I?
Well, it was a long time ago.
Her assertion that Aenys' decision to bestow Blackfyre, the ancestral Valyrian steel sword of House Targaryen, upon his half-brother Maegor simplified his lack of resolve and foreshadowing the challenges he would face. Within his first year as king, in the Riverlands, a bandit named Red Heron seized Harrenhal, proclaiming him a descendant of Heron the Black. On the Iron Islands, a self-proclaimed priest king, Loros, rallied thousands of followers. In the Dornish marches, the Vulture King asserted an army seeking out revenge for the Dornish War's loss within the First Dornish War. Finally, in the Vale, Jaehaerys Arryn overthrew his brother, Lord Ronald Arryn. Aenys' response through these crimes was marked by indecision.
After the Conqueror's death, it did not take long before challengers to the Targaryen rule emerged. The first of these was the bandit and outlaw named Heron the Red. More rebels soon appeared in the Vale and the Iron Islands, while a Dornish man naming himself the Vulture King gathered thousands of followers to stand against the Targaryens.
Convinced of his popularity amongst the small folk, he failed to understand the grievousness that fueled the rebellions. Rather than taking decisive action, he hesitated, considering sending envoys to negotiate with the rebels. In his absence of leadership, regional lords took it upon themselves to quash the uprising. Maegor, wielding Velaryon the Black Dread, swiftly ended Jaehaerys Arryn's rebellion. Lord Goran Greyjoy crushed the followers of Ludus on the Iron Islands. The Marcher Lords, with little assistance from Aenys, subdued the Vulture King, and Red Heron was eventually defeated by Lord Alan Stockworth's forces. Aenys sought to reward the loyal knights and lords who quelled the rebellion on his behalf.
A second son who stands to inherit nothing he doesn't seize for himself.
Otto Hightower is a more honorable man than you could ever be.
He doesn't protect you. I would.
From what?
Yourself. You're weak, Viserys. And that council of leeches knows it. They all prey on you for their own ends.
Offering golds, titles, and lands. However, this would turn back at him. Such when he allowed the Greyjoys to expel the Faith of the Seven from their lands. It made the Faith turn on Aerys, and his perceived weakness made it harder for him to quell other rebellions and also seem as a strong and noble leader amongst the lords of Westeros, and now including the Faith. I mean, he couldn't even quell the rebellions on his own, and he didn't know exactly what to do, and his indecisiveness led to action being taken on his behalf, but without his counsel. So what does this make him look like now? A coward who couldn't even quell the uprisings, and now the Faith has turned their back on him.
With peace re-established, the king thanked the chief lords and champions who had put down these rebels and enemies of the throne, and the foremost reward went to his brother, Prince Maegor, whom Aenys named as the new hand of the king.
In 39 AC, a new crisis emerged when Maegor took a second wife, Alyssa Haraway, claiming his first wife, Viserys Hightower, was barren. Aenys, pressured by the Faith of the Seven and outraged by the polygamous marriage, demanded Maegor choose between exile or to set aside his new bride, Alyssa. Maegor chose exile, departing for Pentos with Alyssa and Velaryon. Aenys' attempt to please the Faith lost him a great asset, but also created a fraction in the foundation of the stability of the Seven Kingdoms. By putting his biggest advantage on the outskirts of the realm, he not only single-handedly let Maegor take the Seven Kingdoms from his own son.
Rhaenyra, I did waver. At one time. But I swear to you now, on your mother's memory, you will not be supplanted.
Because Aenys was not able to stand up to the faith of the Seven, he chose them over his own brother. I understand that they were estranged, but still, kin should come first. And they had Velaryon. They had so many dragons under their Uric. To bow down to the faith is absolutely insane. I'm not saying cause a war because of it. They could have adopted in the act of exceptionalism way sooner before Jaehaerys. The fact that the faith believed that the Targaryens were just going to not marry brother to sister or take multiple wives is outrageous. Aenys attempted further to appease the faith by appointing Septon Manison as hand of the king. This failed to quell the discourse around his reign. The High Septon, according to many among him, believed that he criticized Aenys as being weak and ineffectual to rule. The faith militant uprising. Aenys' decision to betroth his eldest children together, Rhaena and Aegon, to one another in a Valyrian tradition of siblings marrying intertwined was a widespread outrage across the faith and the small folk.
Was I drank wine, left the castle after dark, that you fucked Daemon in a pleasure house? This is a vile accusation. Is it? You Targaryens do have queer customs. And Daemon certainly knows no limit. Alysanne.
The faith believed this unification was an abomination, and even the small folk who once cheered Aenys turned their back against him.
From the starry sept came a denunciation such as no king had ever received before, addressed to King Abomination.
Undeterred, Aenys proceeded with the wedding, which only led to further alienation with the faith and nobility. Septon Marmison, who later officiated the ceremony, was later expelled from the faith and murdered by the poor fellows. The High Sept denunciation of Aenys as a pretender and a tyrant galvanized the faith militant who rose in open rebellion. The warrior son fortified the Sept of remembrance on Rhaenys' hill.
There's a savage beast in every man, and when you hand that man a sword or spear and send him forth to war, the beast stirs.
While the poor folk rose to the countryside, targeting the king's supporters. Lacking both resolve and the strength to fortify the threat, Aenys retreated to Dragonstone with his family. Legacy and the loss of the Iron Throne. The death of King Aenys I Targaryen in 42 AC marked a pivotal moment in Westerosi history, not only for Westeros as a whole, but for House Targaryen.
The Game of Thrones takes many a queer turn, however, and Maegor himself had fallen in turn, in no small part thanks to the courage of the widowed Queen Alyssa, and the boldness of Lord Rhaegar, who had befriended her and taken her in when no one else would.
Forever enduring the course of the destiny itself, marred by ambiguity and unresolved when it comes to succession. His reign was marked by indecision, rebellion, and the growing influx of the faith militant, ultimately leaving the Iron Throne vulnerable to conflicts and manipulation. Aenys' inability to assert power and control over the realm led to the future cries and power surges within the faith, paving the path of chaos and disorder. A backdrop that sets the stage for violence and insurrection over the Targaryen rule under his half-brother Maegor the Cruel. By 41 AC, the distress of rebellion and widespread discontent had taken a toll on Aenys' health, aging him far beyond his 45 years. His death just a few months later.
In later days, after Visenya's death, it was suggested that King Aenys' sudden demise was Visenya's doing, and some spoke of her as a kinslayer and kingslayer. Did she not prefer Maegor over Aenys in all things?
served as a somber reminder of the dangers of ineffectual rule and a weakness of his leadership, as he had failed to command the respect and loyalty of the realm. Aenys' eldest son, now known as Aegon the Uncrowned, would have to pick up the mantle. Despite being the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, Aegon's claim was usurped by his uncle Maegor. Maegor's betrayal and descent to power, it was one of tragedy, just over politics and a crown weighing so heavy over one's head, the Iron Throne would later kill Maegor. A symbol of power and might, Aenys left House Targaryen broken and damaged.
You should have taken the realm for yourself. Jaime told me about the day King's Landing fell. He was sitting in the Iron Throne and you made him give it up. All you needed to do was climb the steps yourself. Such a sad mistake.
I've made many mistakes in my life, but that wasn't one of them.
Oh, but it was. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win, or you die. There is no middle ground.
I don't want to blame Aenys for the acts committed against his family and children. Maegor the Cruel did that all on his own, but if Aenys was a little bit more stronger, using the dragons under his Uruk, and commanded a better presence of leadership and direction just as his father did, House Targaryen would have not had as many civil wars within it as we see in House of the Dragon. Aenys' death thus marked the end of a reign fought with rebellions and discourse, but it laid the foundation for the bloody contingency of power under Maegor the Cruel. This internal strife, divided by Aenys' faults, foreshadowed an even greater conflict within House Targaryen. The deepening desires and ambitions involved in the sparks of a rebellion and civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons.
If you'd had to choose between Rhaenyra and Aegon, who would you have chosen?
I wouldn't have chosen either. Still, the choosing sides that made everything so horrible.
Sometimes a person has to choose.
Aenys' legacy, much like that of his son Aegon, is defined by false ambitions, hopes, rebellions, a cautionary tale of the perils of indecisive behavior and the failures to project strength at a time where the realm needed stability most of all. Typically, this is at the point of the video where I would say goodbye. This video has a part 2 connected to it, because Aerys' reign is not only defined by the failures of his own, but it's also defined by Maegor the Cruel's reign as well. And we cannot talk about Aerys' reign and not talk about Maegor the Cruel's reign, because his son was not carefully succeeded to him after him. So thus, we dive headfirst into part 2 of Maegor the Cruel's terrible reign of the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. The seeds of House Targaryen's eventual downfall were sown in the tumultuous events after King Aerys I's reign. His death in 42 AC marked a turning point for the dynasty, leaving the Iron Throne vulnerable to division, rebellion, and usurpation.
Those were the days. Which days exactly? The ones where half of Westeros fought the other half and millions died? Or before that? When the Mad King slaughtered women and babies because the voices in his head told him they deserved it? Or way before that? When dragons burned whole cities to the ground? Easy, boy.
The rightful heir, Aegon the Uncrowned, was a young, promising prince whose claim represented continuity and the representation of stability. Yet his throne was seized by his uncle Maegor the Cruel in an act of betrayal that forever marred the course of the Targaryen history. Maegor's ruthless usurpation not only shattered the unity of House Targaryen, but also planted seeds for the distrust and ambition that would plague the dynasty for generations to come.
Maegor, the first of his name, came to the throne after the sudden death of his brother, King Aenys, in the year 42 AC. He is better remembered as Maegor the Cruel, and it was a well-earned sobriquet, for no crueler king ever set the Iron Throne.
Maegor's reign began with blood and fire, as he crushed his opposition with a brutal efficiency that earned him both fear and hatred. One of the most hateful moments of his reign came when Aegon sought to proclaim his birthright. Riding Quicksilver, Aegon confronted Maegor in the battle that would forever change the legacy of the Targaryens.
It's no easy thing for a man to be a dragon slayer. But dragons can kill dragons, and have. The simple truth is this: we have more dragons than Aegon.
Viserys spoke often of the Valyrian history as I know them well. When dragons flew to war, everything burned. I do not wish to rule over a kingdom of ash and bone.
Dragon met dragon in combat, and this would forever change history as we know it, resulting in a cataclysmic of events that history would never forget. Quicksilver, smaller and weaker than Velaryon the Black Dread, was no match for Maegor's monstrous dragon. The skies burned as fire and fury clashed, but in the end, Quicksilver and her rider were destroyed. Aegon, the rightful king, perished in the flames, and his dream of unity and peace for the Targaryens' rule died with him.
Alyssa and Aenys' next eldest son after Aegon, Prince Viserys, had been kept at the Red Keep as the king's squire, however, and he suffered for her flight. The king left his body in the castle courtyard like so much offal for a fortnight, hoping that word of it would force Queen Alyssa to claim her son's body, but she did not return. Viserys was 15 at his death.
This moment is more than a tragic tale of the death of a prince. It was a harbinger of the bloody future that awaited House Targaryen. The use of their dragons against one another shattered the mystique of the Targaryens' unity, proving that their greatest strength could also become their greatest weakness. The death of Quicksilver at the claws of Velaryon foreshadowed the destruction when the dragons would be turning on each other in greater numbers during the Dance of the Dragon. Maegor's usurpation left scars in the Targaryen dynasty that would not fully heal.
No, they're incestuous aliens, Duncan. Blood magickers and tyrants who've burned our lands, enslaved our people, dragged us into their wars about a mote of respect for our history or our customs. Every pale-haired brat they saddled on us has been madder than the last.
His tyrannical reign not only alienated the lords and small folk of Westeros, but also divided the house itself. The mistrust and betrayal that marked his ascension to power created a dangerous precedent for the future generations. It taught the Targaryens that power could be seized rather than earned through ruthless means, violence, and treachery, a lesson that would later prove catastrophic in the war to come. The Dance of Dragons taught us many things, but most importantly, it taught us that when the Targaryens want to play their Game of Thrones, the small folk are left to pick up the pieces of their bloody wars. Maegor I. History knows Maegor as the Cruel, stands as one of the most divisive and fearsome figures in the history of the Seven Kingdoms. Born in 12 AC to King Aegon I Targaryen, the legendary conqueror, and Queen Rhaena Targaryen.
Rhaena.
Vhaegar's first rider. And the first wielder of Dark Sister.
I hope you do not mean to use her as an example.
Why shouldn't I?
Well, it was a long time ago.
Maegor's life was destined to shape the Targaryen legacy in more ways than one, both profound and also catastrophic. From the moment of his birth, Maegor exhibited an aura of strength and dominance that set him apart, traits that would ultimately define his tumultuous rise and influence during his reign. Raised on Dragonstone under the watchful eye of his formidable mother,
Queen Visenya proposed that Maegor be wed to Aenys' first child, Rhaena, but the High Septon mounted a vigorous protest, and Maegor was wed instead to the High Septon's own niece, Lady Cerys of House Hightower, but that proved a barren marriage. While Aenys bore more fruit,
Maegor was groomed to embody the might of House Targaryen. In his early years, he was marked by the display of strength and a petulance for violence, setting the stage for his later reign. Trained in combat by Sir Gawain Gorbray, the master-at-arms of Dragonstone, Maegor quickly displayed himself as a seasoned warrior. By the age of 13, he was defeating seasoned knights in melees, and on his 14th name day, his mother gifted him Dark Sister, a very well-known and infamous Valyrian steel sword. Yet, even in his youth, Maegor's cruelty came to the surface. Legends of his violent temper and brutal actions foreshadow the tyrant he would later become.
Cersei is as gentle as King Maegor, as selfless as Aegon the Unworthy, as wise as Mad Aerys. She never forgets a slight, real or imagined. She takes caution for cowardice and dissent for defiance. And she is greedy for power, for honor, for love.
Including an infamous story of him butchering a stable boy who would dare to interject when Maegor was lashing out a horse. Despite his martial accomplishments, Maegor's life was marked by a distrust within his relationship with his half-brother, Aenys I. See, Visenya raised Maegor at Dragonstone, while Aegon raised Aenys at King's Landing, and because of this, they were hardly in each other's life, and it seemed as though Aegon favored Aenys more. Maybe because Rhaenys died so young during the conquest, but he clearly had a favorite. Same with Visenya. Visenya wanted Maegor on the throne because she wanted her son to be on the throne. What kind of mother wouldn't want their son on the throne? While Aenys embodied the noble and diplomatic, peaceful ideals of leadership, Maegor embodied strength through demeaning means and fear above all.
A more conventional approach, true, not as sensational. His numbers were few, but we may yet retake.
It is my fault, I think, that you have forgotten to fear me.
These contrasting perspectives led them to butt heads, forcing each other to turn each other's back on one another, culminating in Aerys' death in 42 AC, plunging the realm into chaos. Maegor's ascent to the Iron Throne was nothing short of a blood-soaked usurpation, denying the rightful heir, his nephew, Aegon the Uncrowned. Maegor seized power with the backing of his mother and loyalists that believed the only thing that would resolve order to a realm in turmoil was a reign of a leader that would unite the realm with ruthless means and doing anything to consolidate fear in the High Lords of Westeros. And exile. In 32 AC, King Aegon died. The warrior had lived a long life, and now he was at peace, and his sons, Aenys and Maegor, attended the funeral together. During the funeral, Aenys attempted to consolidate power, admitting that he was not a warrior like his half-brother Maegor was, presenting Maegor with Aegon's Valyrian steel sword, Blackvial, proclaiming that they would rule together.
She feels the earth washing away beneath her feet, and now she expects us to ignore her transgressions and for me to marry my only daughter to one of her plain-featured sons.
The proposal is a good one, my queen. We're a family. Let us put aside these childish quarrels. Join hands and be stronger for it.
You may do as you wish, husband. When I am cold in my grave.
After Aegon's death, Maegor finally claimed a dragon, his father's mount, Velaryon the Black Dread, whom he had long coveted. Shortly after Aenys' ascension, several rebellions broke out. Maegor helped crush these rebellions, further creating a sense of resolve. Aenys rewarded him. Alan Stockworth had actually died fighting against the rebels, so he appointed Maegor the Cruel as the new hand to the king to reward him for his service of the crown. In this position, Maegor only held it for 2 years.
The king's hand should be high-born lord, someone wise and learned, a battle commander or a great knight.
Sir Ryan Redwine was the greatest knight of his day, and one of the worst hands ever to serve a king. Septon Murmison's prayers worked miracles, yet they failed as hands, every one. As for birth, the Dragon Kings oft chose hands from amongst their own blood, with the results as various as Baelor Breakspear and Maegor the Cruel.
Despite being already married to Viserys since 25 AC, Maegor had no children, and by 39 AC, that year Maegor suddenly announced that Viserys was barren, so he took another wife, Lady Alyce Haraway. Unable to convince the Sept at Dragonstone to perform the wedding, Maegor and Alyce were wed in a Valyrian-style custom led by Dowager Queen Vaella Targaryen. The marriage became an outcry from the faith of the Seven. Maegor quarreled bitterly with his brother, King Aenys, while Cersei's brother, Lord Martin Hightower, demanded that Maegor set aside Alyce. The High Septon denounced the wedding as sinful, calling Alyce the whore of Haraway. Many pious lords followed his example, openly referring to Alyce as Maegor's whore. Maegor remained defiant, citing his father's multiple marriages and claiming that the faith could not scrutinize them as they were the blood of the dragon.
You have ruined her. What lord will wed her now in this condition? Who gives a fuck what some lord thinks? You are the dragon. Your word is truth and law. I have spent a lifetime defending you, but your heart is even blacker than I thought. I should disinherit her, as I already did you. Be done with it.
Feeling he had no other option, Aenys furiously gave Maegor an ultimatum: either set aside Alyce or go into exile for 5 years. Maegor chose exile, and in 40 AC he left Pentos with Alyce and Velaryon. He also took Blackfyre with him, refusing to give it back to Aenys on his request. Septon Murmison replaced Maegor as Hand, and in 41 AC, Aenys officially announced his son Aegon as Prince of Dragonstone, claiming the Iron Throne. I don't want to over-repeat myself, seeing as this is a really long video, but I do want you to understand Maegor's perspective. So he used the Faith Militant's uprising to his advantage, pretty much.
Ravens flew, declaring that a new king had been crowned, one who would treat his loyal supporters justly and bring a traitor's death to those who opposed him.
Because Aegon and Rhaena was trapped, he was able to seize the throne so quickly. And at this point, Aegon had not claimed a dragon. Quicksilver and Aegon were newly established because Aegon had put off mounting a dragon. And that was also a point of conjecture for Maegor usurping the throne. Some lords believed Aegon as weak as his father because he had not claimed a dragon. But nay, I do not believe Aegon was weak. I believe that if he was as weak as his father, he would have allowed Maegor to usurp his throne. He would have not rode into battle on Quicksilver, faced Velaryon the Black Dread head on, knowing he was going to die if he was weak.
I am not here to be Queen of the Ashes. That's very nice to hear. Of course, I can't remember a queen who was better loved than my granddaughter. The common people loved her. The nobles loved her. What is left of her now? Ashes. Commoners, nobles, they're all just children, really. They won't obey you unless they fear you.
Using this to his advantage, he was able to seize the capital very quickly. After Aenys was burned and buried, Visenya flew to Pentos on her dragon Vhagar to bring Maegor back to Westeros. Though Aerys' son, Aegon, was the rightful heir, she wanted her own blood, her own kin on the throne. Maegor immediately claimed the crown at Dragonstone with the Valyrian steel crown of his father, King Aegon. Grand Maester Gondel protested Maegor's ascension, asserting that by all laws of inheritance, the crown should be passed down to Aegon.
I will not have this. To hear that you are plotting to replace the king's chosen heir with an impostor.
His firstborn son is hardly an impostor.
Hundreds of lords and landed knights swore fealty to the
That was
princess.
20 years ago. Most of them now dead. You heard the Lord Hand, plot or no. The king changed his mind.
I am 76 years old. I have known Viserys longer than any who sit at this table, and I will not believe that he said this on his deathbed alone with only the boy's mother as a witness.
In a ruthless display of power, Maegor beheaded Glondel with Blackfire, making him the first person that he would kill under his reign. Maegor then set his sights on King's Landing, but we have to understand that the Faith had taken over King's Landing and Aerys had fled. He has to be very deliberate in where he goes. He sets his sights on the Sept of Remembrance on Rhaenys' Hill, flying high above the city on Velaryon. Maegor plants his banner on Visenya's Hill to rally men to his cause. Dowager Queen Visenya challenges those who question her son's right to the throne.
Visenya then challenged any who denied Maegor's right to rule to prove themselves, and the captain of the warrior sons accepted the challenge. Sir Daemon Morrigan, called Daemon the Devout, agreed to a trial of 7 after the ancient fashion. Sir Daemon and 6 warrior sons against the king and his 6 champions. It was a contest in which the kingdom itself was at stake.
With no knights of the Kingsguard by his side, because Aerys took them all to Dragonstone, Maegor turned to the crowd, asking who would stand with him. Immediately, most of them did and pretended like they did not hear his command for men of arms. But Dick Bean steps forward. Inspired by Bean's courage, Sir Baron of Brune follows suit. Ashamed of these men's bravery, several other knights from the crowd step forward to fight alongside Maegor. Maegor now chooses 4 champions to sit beside him and fight: Sir Bran of Blackhole, Sir Raid of Rothby, Sir Guy Lothden, Sir Lucifer Masty. Together, they faced 7 of the warrior sons. Maegor was the sole survivor of this trial by combat, but he took a severe blow to the head, causing him immense amount of pain and later coma, as the last warrior son collapsed and died. He was carried off the field by his mother and supporters. Maegor was confined to bed rest, lying in a deep coma. On the 28th day of Maegor's coma, Queen Alysanne returned from Pentos with Tiana of the Tower, who took care of Maegor. On the 30th day of the trial, the king had finally awoken, ready to assert his rule with renewed vigor and determination. Reign of Tyranny. When Maegor woke from his coma, he wasted no time asserting his dominance. Mounting his dragon Velaryon, he flew to Rhaenys' Hill and asserted to burn and orchestrated the burning of the Sept of Remembrance. His archers were deliberately placed in key points, killing all of those who attempted to flee the inferno, leaving no survivors. This act of terror was one that began Maegor's ruthless campaign to crush the Faith Militant. That same year, Maegor's forces achieved a decisive victory over the Faith Militant in 2 specific battles, one of Stonebridge and another of Great Fork over Blackwater River.
At the Battle of Stonebridge, the poor fellows fell in droves, and it is said that the Mander ran red with blood for 20 leagues. Afterward, the bridge and the castle that commanded it became known as Bitter Bridge.
Maegor personally participated in the latter, raining fire and death upon his enemies from Velaryon's back. Following the triumph, Maegor declared his intention to marry again, this time to Tiana of the Tower, when Grand Maester Mirish objected, proclaiming that Maegor had only one true wife. He wasted no time in chopping off his head with Blackfire. The wedding took place on the hill of Rhaenys, surrounded surrounded by the charred remains of the warrior sons who had perished there just months previously. It was rumored that Maegor had extinguished at least a dozen septons before finding one willing to perform the ceremony. Meanwhile, the High Septon in Old Town loudly proclaimed all of these marriages were abominations and just whores, while Maegor's first wife proclaimed herself as Maegor's lawful queen by the laws and titles of Westeros. As the faith continued to resist his reign, Maegor imposed a set of laws forbidding any holy man from carrying arms and punishing lords who spoke out against his oppression of the faith.
The High Sparrow steepled his thin hands.
I have had the self-same thought, your grace, just as Maegor the Cruel once took the swords from the faith. So Jaehaerys the Conciliator deprived us of the scales of judgment.
In defiance, the High Septon commanded Maegor to present himself to Old Town and beg his forgiveness against the gods for his sins and cruelty. Maegor allowed this to simmer for nearly half a year while he was focused on the construction of the Red Keep. Eventually, his mother, Visenya, took matters in her own hands, mounting her dragon, Vhagar, and burning the seats of several houses in the Reach in a single night. One not to be overdone by her son Maegor, who also mounted his dragon Velaryon, flying to the Westerlands, torturing the stronghold of houses that had shown him no loyalty from a royal summons, leaving a toll of ashy fire ruins in their wake. Next, Maegor and Visenya turned their ire to Old Town, threatening if they did not stop this pursuit against the Targaryens, the starry sept of Old Town would be lit up in an inferno.
When my dragons are grown, we will take back what was stolen from me and destroy those who have wronged me. We will lay waste to armies and burn cities to the ground. Turn us away, and we will burn you first.
The High Sept mysteriously vanished and died in the coming days. Seizing this opportunity, Lord Martin Hightower opened the gates to spare Old Town from this destruction. The new High Septon, a more passive man, quick to whatever Maegor wanted, had arrived to the Starry Sept and did nothing to prevent the execution or purging of the warrior sons. Maegor overshadowed and began to execute, either sending the warrior sons to the wall or executing them outright. He later remained in Old Town for half a year, presiding over trials, diplomatic proceedings, creating new laws, and ordering bounties for those who were faithful to the faith militant could die by the hands of another and would be rewarded with a gold dragon. During his stay, Maegor reconsolidated with his queen, Sarah's Hightower. They celebrated their reunion with a lavish feast and a second consummation, after which Sarah returned to King's Landing. Later that same year, Prince Aegon, Aenys' firstborn son and Prince of Dragonstone, announced his rightful claimant to the Iron Throne.
The High Septon crowned Aegon in the Dragon Pit. I witnessed it myself just before I fled on Meleys.
They crowned him before the masses.
So that the masses would see him as their rightful king.
That whore of a queen murdered my brother and stole his throne, and you could have burnt them all for it.
A war is like to be fought over this treachery, to be sure. But that war is not mine to begin.
Supporters began to flock to him. Mostly those of the Westerlands, Riverlands, and Aegon began to march with a new formed army, with 15,000 men backing him. Still in Old Town, Maegor was alerted by his queen Tiana and mistress of Whisperers that the powerful houses such as Baratheon, Arryn, Stark, and Lannister were considering joining Aegon's cause if he he could prevail. In response, Maegor ordered his royal lords that were loyal to him, host beside him, to block in their battlement, meeting at the God's Eye. It was a brutal and noble battle, but Aegon had failed. The ensuing battle beneath the God's Eye was brutal, and Maegor ended the rebellion by slaying Aegon and his dragon Quicksilver. This act of revenge and bloodthirsty hatred dubbed Maegor the Cruel as a kinslayer, and the realm turned against him.
In what came to be known as the Great Battle Beneath the God's Eye, Aegon died in that battle, leaving behind his wife and sister Rhaena, and their 2 twin daughters. His dragon, Quicksilver, was lost as well.
By 44 AC, Maegor had taken Aenys' wife, Dowager Queen Alyssa Velaryon, and her youngest children, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, as wards of Dragonstone, while he summoned her son Viserys to court as his personal squire. Still without an heir, Maegor visited one of his 3 wives each night. When Queen Alyssa announced her pregnancy, she was confined to her bed. However, she went into labor prematurely, giving birth to a twisted, eyeless monstrosity that looked that of a dragon. Convinced that the child was not his, Maegor executed everyone involved in the birth. That Maegor the Cruel was seated upon the Iron Throne, holding the head of Grand Maester Desmond when Queen Tiana approached him with shocking news. She claimed that the disformed child was that result of Alice's secret affair, born out of desperation to give the king a son. Tiana provided a list of names as proof, adding another layer of betrayal and intrigue to Maegor's already bloody reign. Under Maegor's torture, the 20 men imposed in this conspiracy were injected with several forms of torture. All but 2 eventually confessed to these crimes. In a chilling display of ruthlessness, Maegor had Alice dragged from her bed and delivered into Tiana's hands for investigation and torture. The torture Alice endured was horrific, but it was nearly the beginning. Every Haraway in King's Landing, including Maegor's hand, Lord Lucas Haraway was executed, with Alice suffering the most grievous of the death. Maegor's vengeance didn't stop there. He killed every single person with Haraway blood or that had a title of Haraway, abolishing the house forever.
And finally one day, he rebelled against my father. Do you know where House Rhaena is now? Gone. Gone. A gentle word. Why not say slaughtered? Every man, woman, and child put to the sword. I remember seeing their bodies hanging high above the gates of Casterly Rock. My father let them rot up there all summer. It was a long summer. And now the rains sweep o'er their halls, and not a soul to hear.
Upon returning to King's Landing, Maegor was met with devastating news. His mother, Dowager Queen Visenya, had died. This loss of his most fervent supporter had hit Maegor hard. Amidst the chaos, Aerys' widow, Dowager Queen Alyssa Velaryon, had escaped Dragonstone, taking her 2 youngest children, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, along with the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister. Outraged by this attempt, Maegor ordered the arrest and torture of her eldest surviving son, Prince Viserys. For 9 agonizing days, Viserys endured relentless torturing and questioning by Queen Tiana. Ultimately, he succumbed to his injuries. His body was hanged by the courtyard for a fortnight, a gruesome display to compel Alyssa back to the courtyard of King's Landing, but this ultimately failed its purpose. One aspect within Maegor the Cruel's reign was that he helped carefully craft the Red Keep, secret tunnels and passageways so that people can come in and out of the Red Keep without being deterred or noticed. One way to keep these secret passageways secret is to kill those who had worked on the Red Keep through those years.
I might be able to slip the child into your bedchamber unseen.
Chataillers is not the only house to boast a hidden door. A secret access to my chambers? Tyrion was more annoyed than surprised. Why else would Maegor the Cruel have ordered death for all the builders who had worked on his castle, except to preserve such secrets?
He hosted a lavish feast in 45 AC to congratulate all of their hard work. At the end of the feast, he slaughtered all of the men who worked on the Red Keep, keeping their ruins beneath it as a somber reminder of the hardships it takes to carefully craft a building as excellent as the Red Keep. Undeterred by the loss of all of the men that worked so hard to build the Red Keep, Maegor the Cruel set his sights on a new project. He wanted to build a dragon pit to house all of the hat dragons. He wanted this project to be on Rhaenys Hill, a monument of the Sept of Remembrance that was now a charred and ashen ruins. But because he killed all of the people that worked on the Red Keep, news traveled fast and nobody wanted to help Maegor. So he had to use the prisoners that he kept in his dungeons. In late 45 AC, Maegor the Cruel mounted Velaryon and went on a persistent pursuit against poor fellows and the warrior son, rooting them out and killing them by the thousand. Later that year, he came back with a trophy of 2,000 skulls, proclaiming it to be poor fellows and the warrior sons. But the true account of his victims is shrouded in mystery, and many believe that there's innocent small folk within that number. But because of the tyrannical government that Maegor is running, they did not have enough money to pay for all of the escapades that he was going on. Not only that, he was building the Red Keep, and then he also wants to build the Dragon Pit. He keeps killing people, so they have to keep raising the taxes on the small folk, and that doesn't work, so they want more money from the lords of Westeros. This is the beginning foundations of the rebellion. See, everything was fine and dandy when he just kept killing people, but when we start raising taxes, they're like, don't touch my money. And so that's exactly what happened. The downfall of Maegor the Cruel's reign. By 48 AC, Maegor the Cruel's tyrannical government had led into an instability and rebellion. Prince Jaehaerys, the last surviving son of Aerys, claimed the throne was his by support of Lord Bormus Baratheon, who had named him protector of the realm and hand of the king. Jaehaerys, with 2 dragons, Vermithor and Silverwing, against Maegor's one, Velaryon the Black Dread, Queen Vaella Targaryen fled Maegor, joining her brother's cause, Jaehaerys. She added Dreamfire to their Uruk and was able to put an additional dragon, so that was 3 against his 1 now. Maegor's reign quickly fell apart. With allies not being loyal to you and only fearing you, they can run away at a moment's notice. Maegor revealed and openly defied Princess Rhaella's demands and asked to behead her, but House Hightower denied his request, and after that it was a sea of insurrection. The most notable among them was Lord Daemon Velaryon, commanding the royal fleet, went to Jaehaerys' side at a moment's notice. Kingsguard and notable members of his small council began to turn their back on Maegor, seeing as he was not fit to rule. Maybe in the beginning when they needed a stronger leader, but now, after he went through that concussion and coma, it seemed that the leader that they needed was one of peace and unity, not of destruction and chaos.
But I swear to you, she will pay for what she's done. And we will bring peace back to Westeros.
Peace? Do you think that's what we had under your father? Or his father? Or his? Peace never lasts, my dear.
However, it never came to battle. Maegor could only muster a measly 4,000 men to back him in his war of succession once more. But before they could even fight in battle, Maegor the Cruel was found dead in the throne room, his throat slit in with a sword of that of the Iron Throne, and his wrists slashed. Some argue that it was a suicide, and others believe that the Iron Throne did it to Maegor himself, proving that he was unable to rule, and because of that, the throne itself had to intervene. Conclusion and final thoughts. This was an extremely long video, and I hope you watched it all the way through and enjoyed it. Now, it just took me so long to record that I will do a whole separate video talking about Maegor the Cruel's Black Brides, if that is something you want. But I really wanted to focus on the aspects of Maegor the Cruel and Aerys Targaryen and Aegon the Uncrowned, and how they really paint the picture of what's to come in the Dance of the Dragons. The foreshadowing in George's world is so astonishing, especially when it comes to the parallels of Aegon and Jaehaerys. I would have never assumed that Aegon the Conqueror and Jaehaerys the Conciliator are supposed to parallel each other unless I did this video. They're able to command a battle presence in a way that intimidates the High Lords, but also gains their respect. You need a leader that's loved by millions with the right family name that also knows when to pick their battles. Maegor the Cruel was headstrong, cocky. He was too blind for his own good. And I think that's a lot to do with Visenya raising him. And then there's also rumors about, but maybe Maegor the Cruel was always supposed to be stern and cruel. Maybe it was his concussions. But either way, planted the seeds of the rebellion of the Dance of the Dragon. Jaehaerys was the peaceful means to end the uprising, but it was a band-aid solution to the overall conflict that they were trying to prevent, the dragons dancing. The act of Maegor the Cruel taking Velaryon the Black Dread and Aegon the Uncrowned taking Silverring above the God's Eye and them dueling together is an act that should have never happened. Never should have happened. And the fact that they even allowed people to see that proves that the ambition and glory of the Targaryens would have eventually led to their downfall. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Watchers Beyond the Wall, I am out.